Yo.
7:30.
7:30.
It's time.
On the dot. Whatever that means.
Well, on the dot, something like the dot.
Hello, life group people.
Drinking some water.
We just finished Taco Bell.
Yes, we're
very
kind of
quickly
rushing through, getting stuff done.
So feels like we haven't seen you guys since Thursday. It's a little different this week because we had our makeup on Thursday, and so this is we are going to hopefully finish up Isaac tonight. The story of Isaac. Some very interesting stuff. So anybody out there, we just want to see if anybody's hanging out with us.
Drop us a comment if you're there. Let us know you're there. Let us know if you were at church this morning. I saw a few people.
Yes, it was great to get to see some of you guys this morning.
I saw pictures of some people. It was really cool. Pictures of people I didn't even get to actually see.
Yep. I saw Linda.
Yeah.
Todd Johnson and I talked for a little bit.
Didn't see them.
I saw some other.
I saw Michelle and Miller from a distance.
Yeah, saw a few people, and then saw a few of our group in choir this afternoon. We had a choir Zoom thing, so we saw some of them. So it's good to get to start catching back up with folks. Luis is going to talk to you. I'm going to turn off this fan over here.
Noises bother him.
One of our kids left off.
He's real sensitive to that. So, but we're excited about getting back into Bible study tonight. This is a good story. We're going to finish up the story of Isaac and kind of walk through, we've done some of his story already and walk through a few more parts of that. So before we get started on that, maybe some announcements.
Yeah, announcements.
And I think we've got more people joining in.
Okay.
Hello to Vicky and Monica and Beth.
Hey.
Glad y'all are with us. Don't forget to join in for our ladies cooking night tomorrow night. Not that the guys can't join in, but if you want to cook with us, there's a recipe. Hopefully you got it from Elisa if you signed up for that. I'm really excited. We can cook together. She's going to lead us through a recipe. She's also a Pampered Chef consultant. So if you want to buy something, you can buy it from her.
They make some good stuff.
They do. I've had a lot of Pampered Chef stuff. Some of it I've had like the entirety of our marriage. So yeah.
Which for the record is going on 22 years.
We're at 21 and a half.
So
yeah.
Good stuff.
That's where we are.
I can't believe it. All right. Well, we're going to dive in. So that's our biggest announcement right now, except so next Sunday is Father's Day, and we will be taking next Sunday off. And Luis and I will be out of town with the family on vacation. So we're going to take that week off, and we will be back with you guys on the 28th. And then we'll start working out what's going to happen for July and August as things kind of start to shift for the fall. And we're hoping to get to see more of you in person, a couple of events or things. So, and hope you guys are doing good. Send us any prayer requests or anything that you want us to be praying for. And, some of you we haven't seen or heard from in a long time now. And so just, hearts are with you.
Some of you we have, and we have heard different things going on.
Yeah, so it's been great to get to stay in touch with many of you. So, well, tonight we're going to pray and then we're going to dive in. We had a great study on Thursday. If you didn't get to, I think it's one of my favorite ones that Luis and I did, was this last Thursday. We did the story of Isaac and Rebecca. And it feels like this great romance story, and then you kind of feel a little happily ever after
tonight.
But you kind of feel a little happily ever after at the end.
You do.
You're left with that in chapter 24.
It's kind of like a Saw from a Distance.
Yes, slow-mo, Hans Zimmer, John Williams soundtrack going on in the background and
running through a field.
Yeah, you do kind of get that vibe when you're, but there was a lot of interesting things we looked at last week. On Thursday. So if you didn't watch Covenant Week, was tonight 9?
I think tonight is 9.
So 8 was that one. I'll try to put some better descriptions in on them if you're trying to catch up with certain stories. So maybe I can
that's a good idea.
So I'll try to be better with that now that we've done them. So we're going to do this. When we come back on the 28th, we'll be tackling Jacob and his 12 sons and kind of look a little bit at that. We're not going to go too far into the tribes, but want to give you just a little glimpse into that. And then we'll be heading into whatever happens for the fall. So it's going to be good. So let's pray. We'll dive in. God, thank you so much for tonight. Thank you for our life group. Thanks for those that are tuning in now, those who are watching later. I just pray, God, that you'll stir our hearts tonight as we study your word. As Pastor Tim always says, when we read your word, we hear your voice. And so we want to just enjoy being with you tonight, enjoy hearing you share your heart with us through your word. We get to go to the source tonight. And so we thank you for that. Guide us and be with our class, those especially that are maybe going through some tough times, or whether it's a job or family situation, or still dealing with virus stuff, or any of the stuff going on with the riots and those kind of things, all that kind of stuff. God, we just pray that you would just guide us through everything that we're walking through right now and help us to stay focused on you. So we love you tonight in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
All right, so we're diving in. Last week we did chapter 24, which was this great story of Abraham sent his trusted servant, Eliezer, is that what we're calling him? Mm-hmm. Sent him to go get a bride. He didn't want to get a bride from the unbelieving different faith groups that were around. He sent Eliezer back home to where he was from, and we saw a lot of beautiful things with that on Thursday. You just need to go watch the video now and walk through it with us. But he gets the servant comes back with a bride. Beautiful story. Comes back 500 miles. I think it was like 12 days or 20 days.
I don't know.
I forgot now. 20 days or 12 days. No, that can't be right. They did an average of 25 miles a day. So it'd be like whatever. Okay. I can't do math. So, but they came back, and she saw Isaac from a distance kind of thing. And then, they got together, and it says that he loved her, I believe is the last phrase there. So we get the potential for a happy ending there at the end of it and everything. But tonight, as we dive into chapter 26, right?
Well, actually, we're going to start in 25. Yeah, okay. We're going to start in the middle.
We're about to see a definitive dysfunctional family.
Yeah, kind of at this point, it's like, cue the dysfunction.
If you feel like if your family's like falling apart and you just need to feel like someone else is there, and we got some encouragement for you tonight.
This is where it starts, and we had a few Jerry Springer moments, honestly, with Abraham as well.
Yes.
And here we just have outright dysfunction, and that is going to continue. And really, it's a source of encouragement for us, because they weren't perfect, and that just helps me feel better about myself, because we're not perfect. We're not perfect. We don't get everything right, and everything is in our lives is not picture perfect. And that is certainly the case here.
But we'll get more into it. But God's grace is all over this.
Yet God uses them. That's right. So for Isaac, the story of Isaac really is he, as a Bible character, most of his story is wrapped up in either Abraham or in his son Jacob. They really kind of monopolize. They are more forward-moving events in their lives, more so than Isaac. And Isaac is just kind of in the middle. Wilmington, who I like to study a lot, he uses the word mediocre. I think that's harsh, but that's the word he uses, mediocre, who is in the middle of a great father and a great son. But this is his life. And so we're going to kind of go through it tonight. We've already done two of the stories. And I'm going to use this outline that Wilmington offers, which has 5 components of Isaac's life.
Wilmington is a teacher at Liberty.
From Liberty University.
That's what she means by Wilmington.
Yeah. We have
she has a book I got when I was doing studies there.
Yeah. So anyway, there are 5 components of his life that he breaks it down into. One is the submissive son. And in that story of Isaac as the submissive son, that would be the story of when Abraham is asked to sacrifice Isaac. And Isaac does not fight this, and he goes up on the mountain, and he is bound, and he is going to be the sacrifice. And we don't see any sign in the biblical account of resistance on the part of Isaac. It's hard to imagine that there wasn't at least a little bit,
He asked the
or
question.
some
He did
confusion,
ask,
some questioning.
he did ask, where's the
sacrifice? And Abraham says, God himself will provide it. And he did indeed. But the point being about Isaac was that he was submissive and he trusted his father in whatever his father said was best and whatever his father said had to happen. And so a submissive son. The second one was as the gentle groom. And that was the story we did last week about meeting Rebecca, about the servant being sent for Rebecca and coming back with Rebecca. And that whole story, the gentle groom. And he was at the end of chapter 24, it says that she became his wife and he loved her. So Isaac was comforted after his mother's death. So he missed his mother, and Rebecca helped to bring some cheer back into his life.
And then
dysfunction. So now we're in the middle of chapter 25. We'd already done the beginning a couple weeks ago, I guess it was, about the death of Abraham. But in verse 19, it picks up there. And I'm just going to read a little bit to you. It says, these are the generations of Isaac, Abraham's son. Abraham fathered Isaac, and Isaac was 40 years old when he took Rebekah, the daughter of Bethuel, the Aramean, and Padan Aram, the sister of Laban, the Aramean, to be his wife.
Glad you're reading.
Rebekah. He took Rebekah to be his wife. And Isaac prayed to the Lord for his wife because she was barren. And the Lord granted his prayer, and Rebekah, his wife, conceived. Now, this is something that actually you see a lot through the Bible. There's barrenness, and you see that through the family, through this promised family, that there's barrenness, and then God intercedes, And so here, for this part of Isaac's life, we know that Rebekah was barren for a time, and Isaac prayed for her. Isaac prayed, and God answered. And so he is the praying parent here. This is one of 5 times in the Bible where there's a prayer for a child, where there's a prayer that God give me a child due to barrenness. This is one of 5 of those. So then in verse 22, it says the children struggled together within her. So she not only conceived, but she had twins. There are twins. And she said, if it is thus, why is this happening to me? So she went to inquire of the Lord, and the Lord said, and just as a mother, if you're a mother, maybe you've experienced this, when you carry a child, you can feel stuff, and they move, and sometimes there's a lot to that. And I've never carried twins. Maybe some of you have, but the Bible describes them as struggling within her. And she's like, why is this happening to me? Why is this happening to me? I get the idea that she's not very comfortable, and that she is concerned about it.
I love what he says to her, though. Just the first line, even 2 nations are in your womb. I'm fascinated because you look at like the United Nations, you think about all the nations that are in the world, they all had to start somewhere. They all started somewhere.
Yeah.
They all started with not a nation. They all started with a person.
With a person.
A couple and a family. And
this is so early on in human history, really, that everything is beginning. Everything is beginning. And so it's 2 nations are in your womb, and 2 peoples from within you shall be divided. The one shall be stronger than the other, and the older shall serve the younger. And this is what the Lord says of these 2 babies that are within her womb. The older shall serve the younger, which is in breaking with tradition. And yet this is what God had ordained for this family situation. So it says in verse 24, when her days to give birth were completed, behold, there were twins in her womb. The first came out red, all his body like a hairy cloak. So they called his name Esau. Afterward, his brother came out with his hand holding Esau's heel, holding on to him, and in the process of birth. So his name was called Jacob. Isaac was 60 years old when she bore them. And it's interesting, their struggle within the womb, but then also Jacob holding the heel of Esau as they are being born, because of the prophecy that was just given. The older shall serve the younger. And sure enough, it starts to get a little weird. And so it continues, verse 27, when the boys grew up, Esau was a skillful hunter, and that's the hairy red one, a man of the field. And Jacob was a quiet man, dwelling in tents. Isaac loved Esau because he ate of his game, but Rebekah loved Jacob.
Yeah, I think one of the words there, when they talk about, where was it? The part you just read, where were you at?
Verse 26.
26. Yeah. Oh no, I'm sorry. That was not
27.
Yeah. The skillful hunter, man of the field, that kind of stuff. The words in the original text actually there mean so Esau was the man of rural regions. That was actually what the word meant there. And then Jacob actually meant dweller in tents. Not their names, but what they're saying about them there. Esau actually means hairy, right?
I think so.
I think it means hairy.
Yeah.
And Jacob means less
red.
hairy. I forgot what Jacob means
hairy.
actually. So that'll be your trivia for the week. Look up what Jacob means.
It's interesting. You can see the difference between these two guys who are twins.
How to cook. We talked about Jacob actually learned, which would not have necessarily been a thing that the boys did.
Yeah.
His mom actually taught him how to cook, because you see this later.
And one was given to his father and one was more given to his mother. And they had, and cue the dysfunction. They were definitely playing favorites. The parents were.
Now, I wonder, Luis and I haven't talked about this. Do you think that Rebekah told Isaac what the Lord had told her?
Well, I don't know. That'd be pure speculation.
Because we don't have that.
You mean, told Isaac?
Like it's about the older serving the younger.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I have interesting questions about this, because I wonder because it doesn't really come back up how this was, and some of the trickery and things that we're about to see.
Yeah.
What all was known? Or maybe she was scared to tell Isaac that. Of what he might think.
Or if she told Jacob.
If she told Jacob, what would happen if she told
And she's trying
Esau?
To do a little self-fulfilling prophecy.
Yeah. What if she had told Esau that he was going to serve his brother?
That Jacob was going to serve Esau.
What was going to happen? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So, there are some conversations in this that you wonder, have you ever had that? You see somebody like fighting or some issue or something, or some embarrassing thing in public, and you're like, well, that'll be an interesting conversation when they get home. There's a few interesting conversations here that we don't get to really partake of here. So, all right. So now we're moving on, though, right?
Yeah. So next is, I don't know if you wanted to do this part, but in verse 29.
Yeah. Let me go to 29.
About selling the birthright.
Yeah. So here we go. So the birthright, the firstborn had the rights to either a double portion or what could be like 2/3 of the inheritance. Okay. Which seems crazy. I mean, it's, but.
And that's the birthright. And it also included responsibility. That the oldest son would take responsibility for the family, for the mother.
But that's the blessing part that's going to come later.
No, that's part of the birthright.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, it's separate in here. So I didn't.
Sorry.
So, because he doesn't sell that part of it here. So I'm not sure how that will have to. At least I didn't discuss all that.
Sorry.
So, okay, so this is verse 29 in chapter 25. Once when Jacob was cooking stew, so he was cooking, Esau came in from the field and he was exhausted. And Esau said to Jacob, "Let me eat some of the red stew, for I am exhausted." Therefore his name was called Edom. Now this is so interesting. Edom actually means red. And so this whole people group out of this ends up being known as red because of this situation where he wanted some red stew. Like this one moment in his life where he is weak in the flesh, if we can say, and hungry for something. And because of this decision that he's fixing to make, it's going to be something his family is actually named for on with this people group. They're called red. So that's what it says right here. So Jacob said, and this is crazy, Jacob, and makes me wonder what Jacob knew, where Jacob was at on this, because who in the world sells this for that? Sell me your birthright now. Then Esau said, he must have been hungry, y'all. He said, I am about to die. Of what use is a birthright to me? Like he was that hungry, which I can't even get my head around. Jacob said, swear to me now. So he swore to him and sold his birthright to Jacob. Then Jacob gave Esau bread and lentil stew. Wasn't that nice for him to throw in the bread with it? Just a little, He just asked for the stew.
That was very nice.
Nice little bonus there to add to it, since he's going to get, Jacob's all of a sudden gaining a third, a double portion or a third of the inheritance. So Esau bread and lentil stew, and he ate and drank and rose and went his way. Thus Esau despised his birthright. Like that attitude there. And there's a lot of things here. Luis, I'm sure, has some good stuff on this too. One picture that I had in my mind, though, as I started thinking about just how many families we've seen in situations where someone's hungry for something in the flesh, whatever that might be, and you don't realize the value of what this is going to cost you. You don't realize that. I told Louisa today, it's kind of like, I thought, we need to look at the bill. We need to look at the price of the bill before we order something off the menu. We need to look at the bill before we order off the menu to see what it's going to cost us, and whatever that might be. What am I hungry for right now? Where do you feel like you're weak? And like, man, if I don't get this, or if I don't have that, or if I can't get to this place, and what are you willing to pay? What are you willing to sacrifice for it? And it doesn't just impact you. This impacts, his whole legacy ends up being named. It's branded with this moment in his life, which looking back looks so small. To me, I thought about the Garden of Eden. It's kind of like, a lot of people go, wasn't it just a fruit? But it was like that moment of sin branded all of humanity with sin, so that Jesus has to come in. You don't realize the cost. It seems like just a moment. It seems like just a one-time thing. It seems like something that shouldn't be that detrimental. But, I heard a great, pastor friend of ours, he always said, play things backwards. Look at the end result, and then work your way back to the moment and that decision where you are right then. And to put that in terms along with what the story is saying about him being hungry, I'm just saying, let's look at the bill before we order off the menu. So keep that in mind tonight's walk. Do you have something you want to add to that?
Well, yeah, just briefly to say, this last phrase here, that Esau despised his birthright. It shows where Esau's thinking was, very much in line with what Pastor Trey taught this morning. I hope that you got to hear that. If you didn't, go back and listen to it. Very good. But just where our mind is and what we value and what we're thinking about, Esau was not thinking about his future, about things that mattered. He was not thinking about the birthright that was rightfully his. He did not value that. And
it was more off the emotion thing. What did Trey say this morning?
Yeah.
Emotions are indicators, not dictators.
Yeah. Yeah. That was so good.
So that goes on a little bit.
And so this definitely became a dictator for Esau. And it cost him dearly in the end. But in the moment, he did not have the mental wherewithal to resist. His hunger took over. And that lets you know about where he was before he entered that moment. He was driven by those passions and those hungers.
Of course, Jacob takes advantage of the moment.
I can't really say so much different.
He's so honorable.
Because I can't say that he is so honorable. And your question earlier about, did Rebecca tell Isaac? I can't help but wonder, did Rebecca talk to Jacob?
I wonder who knew what.
Did Rebecca say to Jacob, hey, this is the prophecy about you. You're going to rule over your older brother.
Yeah.
It's you. It's all about you, Jacob. Now we got to make this happen. You got to get this birthright.
Or had Esau caught wind of it? Maybe that's one of the reasons he despised his birthright. Like
maybe
Jacob was the fave with mom.
Maybe. I don't know.
Who knows?
And so it's not that Jacob comes out squeaky clean here.
Why didn't he just give a bowl of soup to his brother? Doesn't this seem stupid? Like, it's so, this little passage of scripture, why would he not have just given a bowl of soup to his, that must have been some really good,
costly
soup.
Lentil soup.
Soup there.
In the end, Esau sells his birthright and Jacob gets it, and it is done. It's a done deal at this point. Now, and in our outline, that is the section about Isaac as the parent and these children that he has born with Rebecca, and the difficulty that comes because of it. So chapter 26, if
we're going to move a little quicker because there's a lot, and and you'll see a lot of a familiarity because
I'll go quickly through this section. Chapter 26, this section, Wilmington, he calls this the copycat, where you start to see some things that were similar to his father Abraham. So he's the copycat. Again, there's a famine in the land, and he's going to flee or go somewhere where there's more food. He settles in Gerar, and the Lord appears to him and tells him not to go to Egypt. Abraham, on the other hand, did go to Egypt, but he does not. He appears to Abimelech,
which we don't know if it's the same Abimelech. Remember, that was kind of like Pharaoh.
Let me say that about this. You may be thinking, this Abimelech guy, he keeps on showing up. He must be like ageless, but it's actually a title, kind of like Pharaoh or Caesar. It would go to different leaders in a succession. So that's who Abimelech is there for the Philistines. He goes there, and again, we get into this whole she's my sister thing. So we're doing the she's my sister because Rebecca is very pretty, and he's scared they're going to kill him so that they can take her. So he says, no, she's my sister. And Abimelech, their king, finds out about it and once again calls Isaac out on it, just like he had his father Abraham twice. And so the same thing happens again. How could you do this? It says, where is this? Verse 9, I think. So Abimelech called Isaac and said, behold, she is your wife. How then could you say she is my sister? Isaac said to him, because I thought lest I die because of her. He's just sparing his own life. It sounds extremely familiar, like father, like son. So that goes on. Abimelech issues a decree. Nobody can touch this woman or they will be put to death. And so Isaac settles there for a while in this area of Gerar. And it says in verse 12 that the Lord blesses him. And so Isaac becomes very wealthy. And look in verse 12, it says, and Isaac sowed in that land and reaped in the same year 100-fold. Wow, that's good farming. That's good business. The Lord blessed him, and the man became rich and gained more and more until he became very wealthy. He had possessions of flocks and herds and many servants, so that the Philistines envied him. And that's a powerful word right there, envy. He's living in this region with the Philistines, and he became so wealthy, and the Lord blessed him so much that they all envied him. And just as a quick side note, envy is a powerful emotion. You know, if we're talking about emotions like Pastor Trey brought up this morning, this is one that can become the dictator in your life very easily without even realizing that it has happened. When you envy someone else, you feel that they have received a larger portion unjustly. And when you just strip down envy to the raw state of what it is, what you're really doing is saying, God, it's not fair. You have not given me my fair share. That is what envy says. It says that person doesn't deserve it and I do, and God is to blame. That is what envy is. And it's one of those heart indicators. You know, we've talked about this in life group before. I think I've taught this several times over the years, actually, but it's a heart indicator. When you feel envy in your heart, it's a red flag that for us as believers, we need to say, this tells me there's a heart issue. There's a heart issue here. There's something I need to work on. What am I feeling towards this person that maybe has this or that blessing that I don't have? What does that say about how I feel about them? And what does that say about how I feel about God or what God has given me? And we need to let God do heart surgery in that place. Mark 7, and this is just real quick side note on this. Mark 7, chapter 7, verse 20. Let me make sure I'm in the right spot here. This is talking about taking things in and that what is inside, what you take in other words, the food you eat is not what makes you unclean, but rather what is in your heart. And in verse 20, it says, and he said, what comes out of a person is what defiles him. And then he goes on to explain, for from within, out of the heart of man, come evil thoughts. And so now it's going to give us a list of things that come out of the heart of a person. Evil thoughts, sexual immorality, theft, murder, adultery, coveting, wickedness, deceit, sensuality, envy, slander, pride, and foolishness. All these evil things come from within and they defile a person. Here you see these Philistines had envy in their heart. When we have that or any of these other things on this list, it is that heart indicator that if we don't take care of it, it grows. That feeling of envy grows into action. It grows into hate and us hurting our brother or our sister. And that is exactly what happens here in this story. It goes on, it says, now the Philistines had stopped and filled with earth all the wells that his father's servants had dug in the days of Abraham, his father. So he had all these wells that his father Abraham had dug, and these Philistines went and filled them in. They just got dirt and filled them in. Like, we're going to hurt this guy. We're going to do something that hurts him because we envy. And it's just one of those lessons for us in life that we need to watch out for envy in our own hearts, because it can lead us down a path towards evil and away from light.
Can I throw a log on the fire? Huh?
Yeah.
Okay. So, and one thing I would just add to that, because all of us are subject to the possibility of envy. And in the New Testament, Paul teaches about putting away those things. And I have found that what helps me the most with envy is thankfulness. It's Thanksgiving. To me, if you talk about a way of managing it and keeping it in check, a cure for it, the medicine for me that keeps me from envy is gratefulness. And as you start to study gratefulness and Thanksgiving through the Bible, you find, we're supposed to enter his gates with Thanksgiving, this realization of what you have. Gratefulness is understanding the value of the things that you have. It's not focusing on what you don't have. So for me, I have found that keeps me from acting on those things. I don't find myself wanting as much and fighting that animal as much, because I'm focused on the things that God's already blessed us.
That's so good. I think that envy and thankfulness are opposites. They're opposites from one another, because when we envy, we're saying, God, you haven't given me my fair share. But when we're thankful, we're saying, I'm satisfied with what you've given me.
Even in the Philippians study last week at the church, when they were doing the famous verses of be anxious for nothing, but in all things by prayer and supplication with thanksgiving. Mm-hmm. Thanksgiving's in the middle of so much in the Bible. If you start to notice it, it's like me when I started driving a Jeep years ago. I started noticing Jeeps everywhere. And if you notice, Thanksgiving, gratefulness is all throughout Scripture. So I think it's a cure for envy.
Well, in verse 16, Abimelech basically comes to Isaac and says, go away from us. So it's time for you to go. go away. And Isaac packs up and leaves. And there's a lot of animosity at this point between these people. And so Isaac leaves. He finds somewhere to settle down. He digs a new well, and the Philistines come and say, no, no, and they argue with him about that space. And so they pick up and move on, and they dig another well, and the Philistines come again, and they argue, no, there's argument about that space, again, about that well.
Did you say the names of the wells?
I didn't.
They named one of them Esek, I think. I don't have the right notes here, but
yeah, it's
one of them is called quarrel. Basically translated, it means quarrel, and one of them means hostility. So if you look at what these wells mean, even, and then when he finally gets to a place, are you there yet? Where the last one, 22. He names it Rehoboth. Rehoboth, which actually means open spaces. So,
and he does so, saying, "For now the Lord has made room for us, and we shall be fruitful in the land."
That's good.
The Lord has made room for us. And so he settles in there. The Lord appears to him at that point and just kind of reconfirms the same covenant that was given to Abraham. And then Abimelech shows up and goes with him, goes to see Isaac, and they kind of make a treaty with one another. And Abimelech is saying, we know that you're the man of God. God has blessed you, and let's have a treaty. Let's have peace between us. And so, and this is something also that Abraham had done. And so they do. There's a treaty between them, and peace is had, because at first Isaac's like, but y'all hate me. Y'all kicked me out. So why are you here now? But reconciliation is indeed made. Now, that brings us to chapter 27. Oh, there is an interesting thing at the end of 26, just real quickly. It says, when Esau was 40 years old, so just like that, the twins are now 40 years old, he took Judith, the daughter of Beri, the Hittite, to be his wife, and Basemath, the daughter of Elon, the Hittite, and they made life bitter for Isaac and Rebekah.
Now, Isaac was 40 years old when he took Rebekah, right?
I don't remember.
I think he was 40 years old. So somehow, even though this is in a different place, chapter-wise, somehow, age-wise, this is somehow lined up.
Now, that's interesting that it's, Esau took two pagan wives from the area there. They were not part of this family, and they made life bitter. They made life bitter. And, there had been a lot of strife with that people group. And so they made life bitter for Isaac and Rebekah. Now, it goes on here to one of the more interesting stories of the Bible.
Yep, 27. Strange story, and this is where I wish I knew a little more than I knew on who knew what. I really do. I really wish I knew. But Jacob is struggling. Now, Jacob lives to be, I forgot how old it is. 100, is it like 180 or something? He lives to be pretty old. Is it 173? I can't remember. If one of you guys remember. I just read all this, but I'm not good at remembering things. Jacob dies, and he's old. Okay. But at this point, he's already struggling at this point of his life. You're talking about
Isaac.
Isaac, Jacob. Not Jacob.
I'm like, why are we talking about Jacob's death?
Isaac ends up, sorry. See, I'm bad with names and numbers. It's bad. So Isaac is already struggling pretty far away from his death with his eyes and stuff. We don't know what all he's struggling with here. But obviously he's wanting to go ahead and take care of this blessing thing for his sons. So check this story. I don't know if we can read this whole thing or there's a lot here, but let's walk through it. When Isaac was old, chapter 27 in Genesis here. When Isaac was old and his eyes were dim so that he could not see, he called Esau, his older son, and said to him, my son, and he answered, here I am. He said, behold, I am old. I do not know the day of my death. Now then, take your weapons, your quiver and your bow, and go out to the field and hunt game for me, and prepare for me delicious food, such as I love, and bring it to me so that I may eat, that my soul may bless you before I die. That's an interesting thing here, okay? Now, the women were not allowed to be in on something like this from what I read, but old Rebecca, she was listening. She heard what was going down. And remember the Esau's the hairy one, okay? His name was really Hairy or Rough, I think, one of those two. And so right here, Rebecca was listening when Isaac spoke to his son Esau. So when Esau went to the field to hunt for game and bring it, Rebecca did something here, okay? Which I told Louisa, was like, is this similar? It's different, but is it similar to kind of Sarah taking things into her own hands a little
I think
bit?
it is a little bit,
Kind of
yeah.
a little mirror of that, going on. Rebecca said to her son Jacob, okay, the less hairy one, I heard your father speak to your brother Esau, bring me game and prepare for me delicious food that I may eat it and bless you before the Lord before I die. I don't know if Jacob's going like, but has he had my lentil soup? No, I'm just kidding. Now, therefore, my son, obey my voice as I command you. Go to the flock and bring me 2 good young goats so that I may prepare from them delicious food for your father, such as he loves. And you shall bring it to your father to eat so that he may bless you before he dies. So she's trying to bypass, get Jacob jumped in front of the line here, okay, for Esau.
And it's her plan.
This is her plan, and I don't know. I wish I knew if she had ever shared what the Lord said to her with anybody else. I'm just interested in that, but that's just me. But Jacob said to Rebekah, his mother, verse 11, behold, my brother Esau is a hairy man, and I am a smooth man. That's a great verse. You got to remember, that's our memory verse for the night. Behold, my brother Esau is a hairy man, and I am a smooth man. Okay?
That's not our memory verse.
I don't know why that wasn't in the church memory verse list. Okay? Perhaps my father will feel me and shall seem to be mocking him, and feel me, and I shall seem to be mocking him and bring a curse upon myself and not a blessing. So
Jacob is questioning this plan. Like, is this really a good idea?
Yeah, you realize how smooth I am?
No, son.
His mother said to him, let your curse be on me, my son, only obey my voice and go bring them to me. So she's taking charge. She's doing this thing. So verse 14, so he went and took them and brought them to his mother, and his mother prepared delicious food, such as his father loved. Then Rebekah took the best garments of Esau's, her older son, because he still had all the other senses at this time. Isaac still has apparently his other senses. So they're putting clothes from Esau so he'll actually smell like him, hair on him so that when he feels him, he'll feel him and that kind of stuff. Then look at 16. Skins of the younger goat she put on his hands and on the smooth part of his neck because he was so smooth. And she put the delicious food and the bread which she had prepared. Look, she added some bread in there, just like her son. And she had prepared into the hand of her son Jacob. So 18, so he went into his father and said, my father. And he said, here I am. Who are you, my son? Jacob said to his father, I am Esau, your firstborn. I have done as you told me. Now sit up and eat my game, that your soul may bless me. So he lied to his father right there because his mom told him to. And maybe he wanted this to.
And Isaac, with those senses, immediately starts to question.
The fact that he wanted to buy his brother's birthright, to me, tells me a little bit that he's
close to his mother and he trusts his mother, and his mother's got a plan. I think she's working to fulfill this prophecy.
Yeah.
And it's, we'll get to some of that in a minute.
So here we go. 20. But Isaac said to his son, how is it that you have found it so quickly, my son? He answered, because the Lord your God granted me success. Wow.
Quick answer for that one.
Quick answer.
How'd you get this so fast? Thought you were going hunting.
Then he puts it on God. Interesting. Then Isaac said to Jacob, and keep in mind, this is the family line of Jesus. Okay. Where's the song going? Crazy.
Then
Isaac, verse 21. Then Isaac said to Jacob, please come near that I may feel you, my son, to know whether you are really my son Esau or not. So Isaac's having I'm not sure about this.
Reminds me of, the big bad wolf, or what is it? The one where the better to see you with, my dear,
So Jacob went,
feel the hair.
And he knows Jacob's smooth, so smooth. So Jacob went near to Isaac, his father, who felt him and said, the voice is Jacob's voice, but the hands are the hands of Esau.
So he hears him.
He heard Jacob's voice. They didn't disguise that. And he did not recognize him because his hands were hairy like his brother Esau's hands. So he blessed him. Even though Isaac had some questions or doubts or wondered.
He had some doubts, but Jacob met each one of those doubts.
Yeah. And he was probably thinking, who else would have known? He didn't realize that Rebekah had overheard this whole thing.
Right.
He thought he was alone with Esau, so who else?
He didn't have cause to doubt.
Right. Who else would know exactly what I had sent him to do?
And verse 24 is, are you really my son Esau? And he answered, I am. Then he said,
to him again.
Bring it near to me that I may eat of my son's game and bless you. And so he comes near. Mm-hmm.
Ate it.
And
brought him wine. And he drank. Another way of a device which we've seen used by Lot's daughters and by other people to use wine to, even inhibit a little bit as well. So we see that even here.
And then it goes on as he's giving this to him, he comes here and kisses him. This is a kiss of deception in verse 27. And then it says, Isaac smelled the smell of his garments. And remember, he had put on Esau's clothes so that he smells like Esau's clothes.
Yeah.
He smells like Esau. And he blessed him.
So then he blesses him, okay? See, the smell of my son is as the smell of a field that the Lord has blessed. May God give you the dew of heaven and of the fatness of the earth and plenty of grain and wines, praying for his success. Let peoples serve you. So praying for he will be in leadership and nations bow down to you. Be Lord over your brothers, and may your mother's sons bow down to you. Cursed be everyone who curses you, and blessed be everyone who blesses you. So as soon as Isaac had finished blessing Jacob, when Jacob had scarcely gone out of the presence of Isaac, his father, sounds like a TV show right here.
I mean, they just miss each other.
Esau, his brother, came in from his hunting. He also prepared delicious food and brought it to his father. So he was cooking.
And,
while this is going on.
One is out and one is immediately in to do the same thing. And at this point, it is too late. And it makes me think, where the dysfunction is. What is Rebekah thinking? As a mother, she's giving all of her favor to Jacob, but Esau is also her son, and she is denying that of him, which is where that dysfunction comes into play. It really was one child was his father's and one child was the mother's. But at this point, the blessing is given. Mm-hmm. The blessing is given and it is done. And Esau,
I think we think,
take it back.
Take it back.
Yeah.
But this ceremony and the weight of their words and that custom,
mm-hmm.
when it was done, it was
done. The blessing was given.
And I think we think this would be easy to fix. Little spanking here for this, other kids.
Spanking,
there was more
reprimand.
going on here.
Right.
That's where we don't understand their culture and the intensity of something.
And Esau, in this next section here of chapter 27, Esau is saying, well, bless me too. If you can't take it back, then bless me too. Yeah. What kind of blessing do you have for me, Father, since I actually am the firstborn? It's rightfully supposed to be mine. And he says, no, it's done. Have you not reserved a blessing for me? And he says, no. And then finally, in verse 39 comes the blessing, if you will, that is given for Esau. It says, behold, away from the fatness of the earth shall your dwelling be, and away from the dew of heaven on high. And that's just a symbol of the blessing of the Lord, the dew of heaven. You're going to be away from that. In other words, this blessing of the covenant is not going to be on you. By your sword you shall live, and you shall serve your brother. But when you grow restless, you shall break his yoke from your neck. When you grow restless, you shall break his yoke from your neck. Yoke being what ties us together. And so you're going to serve your brother, but when you tire of that, you're going to break that off. And that is indeed prophetic of what is about to happen. This should kind of bring to mind something that we had studied previously with with Abraham's son Ishmael, who the word was given for him about he will be a wild donkey of a man, and he will be, I don't remember the words exactly, but basically be at odds with the people around him. And it's kind of similar, similar words that are given here. You're going to live by the sword, and you're going to serve your brother. It's an idea of the submission of the older brother. Ishmael was also the older brother, to the younger, because the younger one was where God chose to send that blessing through. And indeed, if you follow the story of Esau, I believe he marries, or his child marries or something, one of Ishmael's daughters. Yeah, here it is. In chapter 28, Esau marries an Ishmaelite. And so indeed, their families do indeed blend a little bit further down the road. And so,
hey, one thing, this is where I had mentioned, Luis and I hadn't finished discussing this, but there was a difference between the birthright and the blessing back up in verse 36, because he says, because he gets mad at his brother that he had cheated him twice. He said in verse 36, Esau said, "Is he not rightly named Jacob? For he has cheated me these 2 times. He took away my birthright, and behold, now he has taken away my blessing." Somehow there was a little bit of difference in there. I don't know at all. We hadn't a chance to distinguish between those two, but he felt like now he had been cheated twice because of this whole thing, and gets this horrible blessing now that he gets on the second side.
Which I think blessing would be a generous term for what this was.
Thanks, Dad.
Very generous term for that.
Keep the meat, but he didn't.
And look in verse 41. It says, "Now Esau hated Jacob."
You think so?
You think? Because of the blessing with which his father had blessed him.
Isn't it interesting that the blessing meant more to him than the birthright?
All of a sudden he cares and he's invested.
Yeah, it's.
But the blessing carries with it promise, and the birthright, he just couldn't see it.
Yeah.
Because what I was saying earlier was not blessing; it's responsibility.
Right.
And so the birthright carries responsibility.
Right.
You have to care for your mother. You have
to
care for your sisters.
That. Yeah.
That part wasn't as interesting.
It's true.
But Esau agrees. Dad's sick. He's probably going to die soon. It didn't turn out to be all that soon. But we're going to have some time of mourning. And then after that, I'm going to kill my brother. That is what Esau declares. And once again, Rebekah hears this. And so once again, with a little bit of deception, first of all, she tells Jacob, "This is what your brother is planning. He's going to kill you. And so you've got to get out of here. You've got to get out of here. And here's what you're going to do. You're going to go to my brother, her brother." Remember, Rebekah came from where they had come from. The name of the town has left me, Haran. And you're going to go back there and you're going to find a bride. And that's the plan for you, Jacob. That's what you're going to do. And you're going to stay there until Esau's anger has subsided. And so Rebekah goes to Isaac and says at the beginning of chapter 28, "I don't want Jacob to take a wife from these Canaanite women, as Esau has done, because they have made life miserable for us." And that again comes up at the end of chapter 27. It says, "Then Rebekah said to Isaac, I loathe my life because of the Hittite women." These must have been quite some girls. She loathes her life because of these daughters-in-law. And so she's saying, "I don't want Jacob to take a wife from these Hittite women. He needs to go back to Haran, to my brother Laban, and find a wife there." And so Isaac agrees. Of course, Rebekah never mentions, and also Esau's going to kill Jacob, so he kind of needs to skip town. Forgot that part. But indeed, Isaac commands him to go. You're going to go back to Haran, and you're going to find a wife there.
And Isaac, we find out he dies a few chapters later. He's actually 180 years old when he dies. So it's crazy stuff.
So at this point, even though we certainly hear about Isaac again, he really kind of drops out of the narrative. That is about the extent of the story of Isaac. Yeah. His story, like I said at the beginning, is largely wrapped up in his father at the beginning and his sons at the end.
Yeah. even though we see a beautiful picture like last week we saw of their coming together and kind of him being a Christ-like, representation of that. But a lot we can learn though from these stories, and I think more than anything, Luisa and I talked about that. It's amazing to see. I keep putting it this way: nothing can stop Jesus. It's like, and with every page we see the need for Jesus, and we see the resilience that God's plan is going to happen even through this most dysfunctional situation that we have there, and some of these situations that are going on. God knows what's going on. He's got a handle on things, and that's probably a good encouragement for us. No matter how crazy things seem in the world or our nation or maybe in your home, God is God, and nothing can change that. And his plan is going to be fulfilled. And so for us, we need to get on our faces, before God, and we need to recognize him as God and pray, and he will direct our paths and our lives and the things that we're doing. And so, Jesus, nothing can stop that. And so that was some of the big things. I think the thing I said at the beginning, before you order something, look at the bill before you order something. Some great things that Luisa shared here in the middle, just
about envy.
Yeah, the envy stuff. The envy stuff is huge. And using thankfulness as a remedy, not remedy, was that right? Remedy,
yeah,
Mm-hmm. Just something to help keep you from getting there. Not a probiotic. What's something that keeps you from going? What's something that keeps you from going?
Probiotic.
It's like a probiotic.
That's okay. You're knowing that.
Thanks. Okay. Listen. You didn't pay a lot for this lesson tonight. You know what I'm saying? So, just kidding. All right. Well, I hope you guys are enjoying this. We're going to finish up with Jacob and just a few details about the 12 tribes. There's some interesting things about each one, just so that when you're studying the Bible, we want you to know. We want you to know the Old Testament. And just like we talked about at the beginning, just to kind of close up, Jesus, when he was on the road to Emmaus, started with the Old Testament and told the story of himself. And I think it would be great for you guys to be able to tell the story too, and be able to trace these covenant roots, these family roots that we have in there of where this all happened.
It's interesting to think that on that road to Emmaus, Jesus might have referred back to this story of Abraham and Isaac and said, this represented me. This represented me.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So it's good to know these foundational stories. For some of you, if you were not brought up learning these stories, I hope that this has been so valuable, and you can go back and listen to these and build a good foundation of the patriarchs. So.
Yeah. And they're done in stories. There's so many stories. I was just listening to a thing the other day. There's so many stories in the Bible because, they didn't have, they weren't sitting around with books everywhere like we have. Mm-hmm. We got 100 Bibles here at the house, I think. And they told stories because they were easy to remember too, and to remember the history of what God was doing. He's telling a story, and so it's great that we're getting to be a part of that story.
It's encouraging to know that these people were not perfect.
Yes.
And so we can't buy into the lie that God only uses us if we're perfect, because that's just simply not true. But Satan sure would like for us to believe that, because if he can make you believe that, then he makes you believe that you're disqualified. And that's just not true. And so if you spend any measure of time in the Bible, you'll see that God didn't choose perfect people. He chose willing people.
Yeah. And if you ever are feeling like you can't see and one of your children comes up to you and they feel hairy, but their voice sounds like another child, maybe ask a few more questions to see if they're really who they say they are.
And more lessons. Don't try to deceive your spouse.
Yeah, don't try to deceive your spouse.
I did tell Rebecca that maybe, I don't know, she should marry anybody named Isaac and never try to deceive them.
Yeah, there's so much going on there. You know what I'm saying?
Those are bonuses.
Yeah, but we were reminded today from Philippians, our minds have to be in the right place and our motives have to be in the right place. So we've got to get our hearts and minds in the right place to really serve the Lord now. So, so let's pray. I'll let you guys go. And just don't forget, next week we won't have life group. We'll be back on the 28th with the story of Jacob. And so hope you guys have a good couple of weeks. We will not be here on Sunday, so if you come to service, you won't see us there. But hope you guys have a great couple of weeks, and we'll be. Oh, it's at the ladies tomorrow night.
Yeah, I hope to see you on Zoom. If you haven't signed up yet, all you have to do is text Elisa, search your email, or look at the Facebook page, or you can call or text me directly. That's fine too.
Don't call me.
Don't call him. Call or text me, 678-549-0527.
This is a party for smooth people, not.
Yeah, you're not invited, but we're going to feed them our stew. So
yeah, with bread and no wine. No wine. Sorry. All right, let's pray. God, thanks so much for tonight. Thanks for this little journey here we've gone on, and some of the great things we've been able to eat in this. There's some meat in these passages for us to really ingest into our lives now, that will strengthen us and help us to, have the spiritual nutrients that we need to be able to be what we need to be. So much in here, God. We thank you for this story. We thank you that nothing can stop Jesus. We are seeing that, but we are also reminded on every page the great need for you. And we are recognizing that in our own lives as well. And so, God, we need you. We need you tonight. We need you this week. And I pray, God, that we will be thankful that we have you, and that we will lean into you, that you will direct our paths, that you will, that we'll listen to your voice above all the other noises in the world. And we just want to thank you tonight. Help us to be grateful people this week. And we love you. Be with our class. And we just love you tonight, Lord. Praise you. In Jesus' name, amen. All right. We love you guys a ton.
Thanks, guys. Have a great week.
Bye.